Hi, how are you, Graham? Nice to see you.
Hi, nice to meet you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you for meeting with me today.
Of course. I mean, we're really excited. We think we could really work out a deal that benefits both of us.
Great.
So, yeah.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about what your client's looking for? I know we both have a lot of interests that we have in common, so hopefully we can get some middle ground and have this deal signed by the end of the day.
Yeah, so my client is really looking for an endorsement that is for a product that he feels comfortable standing behind,
Okay.
and one that he can get really excited about. And I think one thing that's really important to him is he's really trying to give back to the community as well. As your client met my client at a voluntary clinic, so he really feels that sports saved his life, and he really wants to give back, and he thinks that your company would be a great option for teaming up with to help each other. I mean, he could help endorse your product and help the community.
Yeah, so he's obviously, I know I've heard a lot about how he's been involved in the community lately, so that's one of the most important things to him in terms of this deal.
Yeah, that means a lot to him.
Okay, great. Is there anything else that your client's interested in?
I mean, I think he would be very interested in taking part in the creative design of the products, if possible.
Okay.
Whether that means helping to design a certain number of the shoes or helping to select the designs after someone else has designed them. But he's very interested in really being involved and helping to better his name and his reputation while helping to build your company's reputation in like the basketball shoe line, because I know it's something that they haven't done before. So to work together to really grow together.
That's awesome. That's exactly what we're looking for. We want someone who's involved in the line, and I think that sounds like a great fit. Okay, I mean, it sounds like we already have a lot of things that, I'm sure, as you know, our company has a pretty big emphasis on the community and giving back. I'm sure Mr. Wiley is aware of that as well.
Yes.
So I think that with those things, we can definitely figure out something moving forward. What kind of a timeline is your client looking for an endorsement? Did he give you any information about that?
He didn't give me a specific time, but I would think as soon as possible that he'd really like to get involved.
Great. Okay, so I guess really what it boils down to is we need to find a deal that works for both of us, and hopefully I think that sounds like that should be a possibility. So I guess really we just need to get down to the most serious issue is the money.
Yes.
What has your client expressed any opinions about what he's looking for in terms of payment?
You know, we've looked at a couple contracts from the past and ones as recent as last season and this season, and we've tried to compare as much as we could. We know, every circumstance is different, every company is different, and every player is different. So those are things that we definitely took into account while looking at that. If you want, I can throw out a number and we can work from there.
Yeah.
If that would work best, unless you have something in mind.
Yeah, I guess let's start there and then we can talk about the numbers that we both have and see if we can find some middle ground.
So just, and like I said, we can talk about things, and but for a starting number, we have talked about maybe $4 million for a 2-year contract, and I'll give you a little bit of background of why we thought that might be a good deal. So the NBA has definitely gone up in popularity the last couple of years, and there have been other players who have had contracts similar, some for a lot more, who they've had contracts before they've really established themselves as a player. And we really feel that Wiley, he did so much better than anyone could have ever predicted. And while his reputation was a little bit battered when he came into the NBA, he's really worked hard this past year, and he's shown that he's changed and that he's taking things seriously. And from going from 4 different teams within 2 years to sticking with one team, getting along with them, and really, like I said, he's going into the community, trying to make a difference and trying to help others. We just really feel that that's a number that could make sense.
Okay. Could you talk to me a little bit about the contracts that you've been looking at that are in this price range?
Yes, so the one that was lower was a couple of years ago, and that one was with Stevie Madison.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with that one?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so that was for $2 million, a 2-year endorsement. He also had a pass that was less than stellar, and similar to Wiley, he was on an all-star team member and did really well then. And it was a contract that really worked out well for both of them. But since then, due to inflation and, like I said, the NBA growing in popularity, contract prices have really gone up. So there's also the contract with, sorry, I don't have a name right off the top of my head,
Okay.
but it was for a fourth year player in the NBA who was making $2.5 million a year. But
Okay. No,
yeah,
that's
just
fine.
those two are from right
That's
now.
enough for me to go off of.
Okay.
Okay, so like all these negotiations, of course, we're gonna have a little bit of disagreement at the beginning, but
That's
we'll
fine.
talk through it, and I'm sure we can figure something out.
That sounds good.
So we also did some research, and our research shows that for our first round draft picks, last year, the first round draft picks made an average of $1.625 million per year.
Okay.
Of course, Mr. Wiley was not a first round draft pick, but as you said, and so undrafted players like Mr. Wiley generally net about 25% of that, the few that do get endorsement deals. So that comes out to, and according to my calculations, roughly $750,000 a year. But don't worry, we're not going to go that low. My thinking is, Mr. Wiley does have a checkered past, but that's not something that we're very concerned about because, like you said, he's really made a lot of strides towards changing that. But that also, to us, it does pose more risk for us as a business. We get a little nervous about it, but he's made a lot of good progress, and we see that, and that's why we're here today, and we really appreciate that. And like you said, I know that Ms. Peak, my boss, met with Mr. Riley at a neighborhood function promoting sports, which, she thinks that he's definitely turned around, and I see no evidence to suggest otherwise, but from a business perspective, it's hard for us to net the entire thing just in case something is to happen. So I was thinking, because an undrafted player generally would bring in about 25%. Oh no, I'm sorry. So the 25%. So basically that $1,500,000. If you double that for a 2-year contract, which is I think does 2 years sound okay for you for the contract?
Yes, I think that's pretty standard.
Okay, yeah, that's what we've been looking at as well. So if you do 25% of that $3 million, that would be $750,000 for 2 years. And that's what I initially meant to say. But I was thinking because Mr. Wiley has made so many great strides in both his career and in turning his life around, we could possibly double that to go to $1.5 million. And I know that there's going to be a little bit of disagreement there, and maybe we can find out where we can meet in the middle on that. So what are your initial thoughts to that offer?
I think your reasoning, it makes sense from your perspective and wanting to make sure that you're kind of covering your tracks as well. And like I said, there's going to be some, like you said, there's going to be some disagreement, but I definitely think we can find a place to meet.
Okay.
So I understand that, but one thing I would say just to distinguish Mr. Wiley from those undrafted players, a lot of those players don't end up doing very well. And even some of those first round draft picks, companies who make endorsement deals with them are even taking a risk on them because they don't know how they're going to perform under the pressure of the NBA and the games. And Mr. Wiley has, he's really come in and he's shown that he does well under pressure. He does incredible under pressure, and it's helped him both on the court and off the court to really develop himself. So for those reasons, we think that, he would be worth at least just as much of a first round draft pick, but probably even more because he's already kind of proven himself there. And, everyone in the NBA who talks about, the commentators, they all see him going far too.
Mhm.
And I think that's a really important aspect, that we know that he can handle the pressure.
Yeah.
And so I would say that the first round draft picks get 1.625 a year,
Yes.
usually. So I would say maybe 325 would be our counter,
Okay.
to somewhat
Mhm.
match that, but a little above, because he has proven himself, and therefore I would think that from a business perspective, he would be a little bit less of a risk.
Mhm. Okay.
So,
You know, I'm not sure I am authorized to go that high, but I'm thinking there might be something outside of just pure money that we could work with. Maybe would Mr. Wiley possibly be willing to take, you know, we don't have to meet at my number at all, we can
Mhm.
meet somewhere in the middle, but would he be willing to take a little bit less than 3.25 if, say, we were able to run a very large ad campaign with him as the foreman, and the ad campaign would be built around basically youth development sports programs. That way he could really get his name out as saying, like, it would improve his image in the long run. I would assume that after that 2 years, those 2 years are up, his market value would probably be at an all-time high as anyone else in the league. He wouldn't have, like you said, he's made a lot of strides, but there's still, I think some companies are nervous still a little bit, and I think that this is a great way for us to both meet in the middle. He can work on improving his reputation in the community, which he's already made great strides towards doing, and we can get a great player at a you know, and it's someone we want to work with for the long-term future. Would that make any difference to Mr. Wiley?
I mean, I definitely think that would be
Okay.
something he would be interested in. Would you be able to give me a figure, though, that would go along with that?
An amount of money for his contract or for the advertising expenses?
For his contract
Okay.
and advertising expenses would be great.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm thinking if we were to do that program, then, sorry, just give me a refer.
No, that's fine. Take your time.
We could probably authorize to Mr. Wiley 2.25 for the 2 years. And if we were to do that, then we would have at least, I think, $8 million to dedicate to the advertising campaign. And that's a pretty significant amount of money, as I'm sure you know. And I think that would probably be enough within that 2 year period to transition any negative opinion of Mr. Wiley, especially if we focus with a brand like ours that is known for being a reputable brand that really cares about the community. I think it's a perfect match, really, because his interest basically lies in trying to improve his image and, I'm sure, pursuing his passion of helping the community. What do you think about that?
I definitely think that's a great option. If possible, I'd like to go up a little bit for the contract to Mr. Wiley, maybe to 2.75.
Okay. No, I think we're definitely getting somewhere. So you said the last thing that was really important to Mr. Wiley was creative license over the shoes.
I think it's definitely something he's interested in.
Okay. Would you mind explaining that a little bit more? Is it just, he just wants to be able to design the shoes the way he wants to design the shoes?
I think he would just like to have a say in it. I think, you know, he doesn't want to have necessarily to be endorsing something that he wouldn't like to wear and a product that he doesn't believe in. So we'd like to be a part of the decision-making process, maybe.
Yeah, I understand.
So whether that's him helping to design some or maybe making, you know, a color palette for a set of shoes that are going to be released or something like that. Just that he can have a say, and
Yeah.
I think he's also very knowledgeable in that aspect and in that regard to help. So I think that would be a mutually beneficial thing as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I'm sure you know, Mr. Wiley probably knows, this is a new area for us, getting into the basketball shoe market, and I think having someone with his knowledge on the team would be both beneficial and honestly very, very cool for the brand of the shoe. I think it would help the shoe get some, you know, a little bit of credibility. just because they're new and new things kind of have a tendency to, without the right guide in hand, like I think Mr. Wiley would provide. I think, basically what I'm trying to say is I think that this would be a great opportunity, and I think that Ms. Peak is very interested in giving Mr. Wiley an extreme amount of latitude in the shoe design process. Essentially, the only thing that I think Ms. Peak is looking for is the ability to be involved in the process as well. It could be a collaborative process.
I think that sounds great.
So I think with that in mind, if we were able to give him basically a ton of latitude in the shoe design and focus our advertising campaign on him, I think the highest Ms. Peak would be willing to go would be 2.5 million.
Okay, so just to recap, that would be, so $2.5 million contract with Mr. Wiley for 2 years, and that would include the $8 million for the ad campaign, plus Mr. Wiley's ability to really be a part of that process with Ms. Peak in designing.
Yep.
I think, before that, actually, I'd like to hear just a little bit more about the ad campaign.
Okay.
If you have more information that you've heard from your client about that.
Yeah, sure. You know, we haven't really solidified an ad campaign yet because we're still in the planning process, but I assume because Arrive is such a community-focused brand, I mean, it's been a major part of our appeal to people, is to work in the community, and that's another reason that we wanted to get into the basketball shoe market, because we think that we can produce affordable shoes so that you know, everyone can play basketball. And so I think that kind of goes into the community vibe, and that's partially the niche market that we're trying to establish ourselves in as a very high quality product without the ridiculous markup of some of the big brands. So I would have to, I mean, I think that Ms. Peak would be very excited that Mr. Wiley would be interested in being a part of an ad campaign that promotes that, basically that community athletic vibe. So would you like any more information about
Yeah,
that?
I think that that makes sense, and I understand that, you know, it's hard to solidify an ad campaign without the endorsement in place to start working on that. Just one more question. I mean, I think I'm very comfortable with this, but I would like to hear just a little bit, if you have the information on what your budget is for the shoe line and what your projected economics are. Like I said, I know we're still early stages, so I understand if you don't have that.
You know, we have, really I think that we would like to sell 200,000 pairs of the shoes.
Okay.
You know, I think that's a high number, obviously, it's not an easy thing to do, but we feel that with someone like Mr. Wiley and with a successful ad campaign, it's possible. It's actually probable, as long as we can all work together, and I don't see any reason why it shouldn't work out because of, I think, the good connection between Mr. Wiley, the really good brand name of Arrive, as well as I think a really important niche market for people that want high quality shoes but don't want to pay $150, $200 for a pair of shoes. So yeah, that's the main purpose in terms of selling the shoes. How does that affect the analysis at all?
And that sounds good.
Okay.
That was just as something I can take back and let Mr. Wiley know about that. Some of his questions that he had.
Right.
But I mean, I think it makes sense for Mr. Wiley to accept this deal with the $8 million ad campaign, the latitude for design, and the $2.5 million for 2 years.
Great. Yeah, actually, we may even, if we can solidify this offer, we may even be able to bring the ad campaign up a little bit higher, like towards 9 million.
Okay, great.
So, do you have any other questions?
No, I think that's it. Is this something, do you have the authority to make this deal today?
Yes, I do.
Okay, as do I.
Great.
So, great.
Thank you so much. I'm glad we can make the deal.
Thank you, me too. Have a nice day.
Thank you, you too.